The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending the Fidelity Reviewer Training for Supported Employment. We're having some technical difficulties, so hopefully that will cease. We are all three organizers are now on, so I'm hoping that we will not have difficulties after this. If we do, please hold tight, and we'll try and keep things going as well as we can. I know you know from having attended probably numerous webinars that with so many people using the internet and you know, everybody working from home, things are not always working as well as they might. So I apologize for that. This morning we are going to have Paul Ferris talking to you related to supported employment fidelity reviewing. Please feel free to use the chat box to ask questions throughout. And Darren and I, who are also part of things, will monitor and alert Paul when there are questions. And I wanted to let you know too, we will be sending out some materials and things after this is done. So thank you for attending, and Paul, I'm turning it over to you.
Great. You know, if you're on the call, hopefully you're familiar with individual placement and support as a model for supported employment, as an evidence-based model for employment. And since it's an evidence-based model for supported employment, it has a fidelity scale. And again, some preliminary information there. Hopefully you already know that. We'll touch on some of it today for sure. And just a reminder that it's a two-part training. So today's part one, we're going to talk a lot about the fidelity scale and the ins and outs of it. And then we'll spend most of part two really talking about the fidelity review process. When you are a fidelity reviewer and you show up to an agency, what can you expect? So they are, you know, part one and part two are best viewed as kind of in tandem, you know, information. So you'll want to know today's information in order to learn about the next meetings and information for sure. So since we've all made the conversion to electronic since about March, one of the things I like to do is just put out there, especially for longer ones like this, that about every hour you'll see me kind of pause, and that will allow folks to take a break, answer a call, you know, do an email or whatever, stretch your legs. And so we are going to build some breaks into this today is the first thing. The second thing is you'll notice you should have chat or questions in your little toolbar with GoTo. And so we're going to be using that during the afternoon today. And I just want to test that out right now. So what I would like for everybody who's out there as a participant to do right now is just type in your name, your agency, and what your first job was into the chat field of the GoTo webinar. And let's just kind of get that started. I'll start it even though I'm going to say it. So my name is Paul Ferris. I work with Dawn through my work with Public Consulting Group, and we're helping Dawn in Washington try to get IPS, you know, more widespread in the state of Washington. When I'm not doing that, I work for an organization, a mental health center called the Robert Young Center. We are situated in Illinois. We serve about 20,000 people a year. And when I'm not doing that, I'm a fidelity reviewer for the state of Illinois for IPS programs in Illinois. And so my first job I like to tell people about was that I grew up with a father who was self-employed. So my first job when I was about 6 years old was working for my dad. And he did silk screening on t-shirts and jackets and things like that. And they used dryers to cure the ink. So the temperature inside my dad's shop was always about 30 degrees warmer than the ambient temperature outside. So as a summer job, it was pretty miserable because I lost about 50 pounds summer in sweat, even though I drank nothing but water and iced tea all day long. So I always tell him, Dad, it's the worst job I ever had. You paid me terrible, and you probably worked me way more hours than a 6 or 7 year old should ever have to work. But it made me who I am today, so I'm very thankful So first, I'm going to type it into the chat bar here. I'm just going to put working for my father. And so if any of you have parents who are self-employed, you understand that it's a family affair. You don't get to pick your shifts or anything like that. So I'm kind of looking for, let's see, I've got such a small window here on.
It is small, isn't it?
Gosh, it really is.
And lots of folks are answering, lots and lots of jobs rolling by. You and Jim Bischoff had something similar in common in regards to, he said that he started out doing dryland farming, I think was what it said, has rolled past so far up the list that I can't see it again. But I know he's been farming.
Okay, yeah, I see housekeeper. Jessica said housekeeper. And Leslie, God bless you, you said you started out as an employment specialist. That was your first job. That's awesome.
Woohoo!
Yeah, that's great. And as we go through them, oh yeah, okay, I see Jim's now. Pulling rye, driving a tractor, and driving a combine. Jim, we might be able to trade notes on whose was worse. I'm not sure. Pulling rye sounds pretty terrible. Checker at Whole Foods, that's from Jamie. Burger place, that's a pretty common one. And so Bev Young Reed grew up in a restaurant helping my mom as a waitress. My first paid job was a telemarketer. I don't know if I could be a telemarketer. Pam Patterson says Baskin Robbins. That one sounds awesome. Let's see here. First job. So Maura Lammers says first job was being a server at Corner Cafe in Liberty, Missouri. That's not too far from me. But being a supported employment specialist is her favorite job. And then Sarah Baxter says first job as a cashier at a local small grocery store. Mary says first job was nannying a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. That actually sounds really difficult. I remember when my kids were
CVR teaching kids how to swim. I actually did something like that too. I was a respite care provider for DDA and taught kids to swim in a recreation program.
That's right.
So there's a commonality. Somebody said they had a problem finding the bigger box to look at the questions. If your menu has something that says dashboard on it, and you click on the triangle to the left-hand side, it will open up a box that when you look down, you'll see it says questions and a number. If you click on that number, it'll open up the bigger box so that you can see everyone's. And that pulls from questions and chat. So if you don't have one that says dashboard, click on the triangle next to chat and it should do something similar.
And I went ahead and didn't follow my own directions. I entered mine in the chat box. So now you all know all about Paul and his. I was telling Darren right when I logged on, because I had difficulty logging on, I feel like I'm just completely off my rhythm now. So I'll chalk it up to that.
Absolutely. Technology is a wonderful thing when it works, and it's unnerving when it does not.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Well, all right. Looks like we've got kind of slowing down on responses here. Last one is, I might not pronounce this right, Vera Diana, 11 years old, helping mom with at-home daycare. So yeah, another person with a self-employed parent. Yeah, that's its own level of child labor, right? But it helps out, and that's good, inherently good. So why would I ask folks what their first job was, right? So Dawn has heard me say this enough, and Darren, I don't think you have, but I love talking about employment, and I think it is one of the neatest things that providers have in their arsenal to help the clients we serve because of the role we all put on employment in our lives. I always say, when you go to a cocktail party or you get together with friends and you meet somebody new, one of the first 3 questions everyone always asks is, what do you do for a living? And it's such a big part of our lives. And to be able to help clients at a mental health center or a human service provider kind of think about their life in a way that's bigger than just I'm here for an appointment, but in a way, how can I give back? How can I ascribe value to my life as a citizen? Employment is the way to go, right? It is a very powerful thing, and all of us, I'm sure, have stories from our own lives and from our work lives about people that we have seen change in so many positive ways because they had the ability to get employed, and just their self-esteem and their identity and role just all blossomed in such positive ways. It's one of the most important things we can do for folks is to help them get a job. It really is. So the Fidelity Reviewer training today, we can all agree, I'm sure, that supported employment is awesome. And it is awesome, but you're gonna have to wear kind of a different hat today. You've been wearing provider hat, right? Where you're helping your employment specialist, or maybe you're an employment specialist and you're out trying to get clients connected to potential employers, and that's all great work. But when you are a Fidelity Reviewer, the hat you're wearing is you're going to walk into an organization and you're going to evaluate how closely the practices they're currently using align with Fidelity's scale. And one of the great things about a Fidelity Reviewer is they have an objective view, and many providers will tell you one of the worst things about Fidelity Reviewers is they have an objective view of the work. And the reason that's maybe a bad thing to a provider is maybe they feel like the Fidelity Reviewer just doesn't kind of understand the way they do things. But the reality is, you'll hear me say this a lot over the next 2 trainings, as a Fidelity Reviewer, you really have to go by the Fidelity scale. It's an evidence-based practice, IPS. It's got a Fidelity scale, and the further you stray away from the Fidelity scale, the further you stray away from IPS. So we're really going to stick to the knitting. We're going to talk about some of the ins and outs of scoring on the Fidelity scale today. And like I said, we'll talk next or 2 weeks from now about how the process of the Fidelity review. One of the things, this is way back when, Dawn, this seems like a million years ago when we actually had this in person. We reviewed the agenda, did, talked about things like parking passes and lunch and so on and so forth, and the restroom location. Hopefully you can identify where the restrooms are, wherever you're at right now. And as a reminder, if you can put your cell phone on vibrate or your phone on vibrate, that would be good. Sometimes in webinars like this, I've noticed you really get kind of multi-layers of feedback if people, even if a phone is ringing in the background. And so anything you can do to try to quiet that background noise would be greatly appreciated. So IPS, one of the hallmarks about IPS is, oh my gosh, I lost my presentation. There we are. Its ability to continuously drive quality improvement. And if you think about it, you step back and you just think about it purely from I would say, very most superficial level. What a Fidelity review is it is a point-in-time measurement of how closely an organization aligns with the Fidelity scale, right? And if you just think about it from that purely